And welcome to the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. It is Monday, May 23rd, 2022. I'm Taylor Phillips. And this to my right is special guest Kyle Busch from the Healthy Scratch Podcast, one half of the Bushy and Bobo Show. Follow Kyle Busch on Twitter at Kyle Busch11. His other co-hosts, Brian Rager, a Canucks fan. But we're going to talk about Red Wings. Also, subscribe to Healthy Scratch on YouTube and like it on Facebook, Healthy Scratch. Also, visit healthyscratch.ca as in Canada. Kyle, how are we doing tonight?
Thanks for having me on, buddy. I'm actually kind of excited to do this. I was telling you, this is the first time I've done like a live, I'll call it a podcast, right? It's a live pod. So
Yep.
No screwing up this time, no edits. Although on the Bushy and Bobo show, there's no edits, only like here and there if Bobo says something dumb.
Bring on the fire, man.
What I do.
Going to talk about Blashill, the options for his replacement, the rest of the Red Wings roster, plus a couple signings that were recent, including Hirose and Camper, plus the Illich family getting in a little bit of trouble, and finally my NHL division realignment concepts. So let's get to it. The Red Wings, about weekends ago, fired head coach Jeff Blashill, assistant coach Doug Huda, and goaltender coach Jeff Salako. I think it was a silent J there, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Mm-hmm.
So not quite the entire coaching staff is gone. I can tell assistant coach Alex Tanguay is staying put as part of the coaching staff because, like you pointed out in your Red Wings season review, their power play is increased to 15th compared to the regular season right before they hired Alex Tanguay, before Steve Yzerman hired Tanguay. Tanguay, going into that past regular season, he had a power play with the AHL's Iowa Wild, and he ran it very nicely. His power play unit was tremendous. His system was tremendous. And that's why Alex Tanguay is staying put. That's why Stevie Y is keeping him, unlike Blashill, Huda, and Salako. Now, let's get to Blashill. Of course, the route losses and Blashill's inability to lead his team to the playoffs, unlike the 2015-2016 season. The Red Wings roster, now Ken Holland hired Blashill, but Yzerman tried to improve him. No dice. Year after year after year. Yzerman even trying to extend Blashill to a one-year contract, but that didn't work. It got even worse with those route losses that I mentioned before.
Yeah,
he gone. George Cullen, GTFO.
I think the whole Tanguay thing is pretty simple. I think it's just that's the only Yzerman guy that he has hired, right? The rest of the guys they're Ken Holland guys. And keeping those guys around for as long as he did, Steve Yzerman's special in Detroit and Michigan because he's our guy. He was our captain, won the cups, he's beloved, right? Hall of Famer, he's a legend. He's going to get a lot longer time than, let's say, I'm not even say Al Avila because he's been here too long, but let's say with the Lions, right? With Brad Holmes, he's going to have a short leash. If this doesn't happen in the next few years, he's gone. With Yzerman, he's going to have a lot longer just because of who he is. But keeping Blashill around to kind of go through a little bit of the rebuild, listening to Yzerman's press conference at the end of the year, it wasn't just about Blashill. It was about the team as a whole. And obviously Blashill is a big part of it. It's the only thing they haven't changed yet. So what I'm thinking is he's going to try to bring in his guy now. I was clamoring to get rid of him during the season, and that's probably just because of, like you were saying, the embarrassing losses that were happening where the team was kind of quitting. At the beginning of the year, I saw some push from them. I saw some excitement, obviously with Raymond and Sider. That was exciting of having two rookies that were so good, and the team was pushing. And there was that game against the Panthers where there was 4 or 5 shot blocks in a row. The crowd was going bananas. That was the high point of the season, which is pathetic if you think about it, because we have all these losses. And I do blow my mind going through my last YouTube video where it's just the losses of 9-1, 10-7, 8-0, or
11-2
against the like Arizona Coyotes, who were last place, and it's like there's no push from these players, and that comes for obviously they're professionals. They need to step up. At the same time, that's where I look at it and go, whatever the message is, it's wearing thin. There's they either know the coach is on a short leash, or I don't know what's going through a player's mind like that. I've had coaches that I didn't like when I used to play. I didn't really play that high of a level, but there's somewhere you just don't get the best out of you, right? But obviously Tanguay coming back will be nice. I think with better players, obviously the power play gets better, because it looked okay. There were times where it was pitiful, especially the end of the season. It did dive down. But again, you don't have really you don't really have the players to run a power play like that yet. You really have like a number one unit, like maybe second unit, forget about it. But it was interesting to go through who's going to be here, maybe who's not. And I do have some ideas of who I would look at bringing in free agency. Yzerman said he didn't look at really looking, for a trade. But, you can't really take anything Yzerman says, at face value, because this guy's going to do whatever he's going to do, right? But just,
right.
yeah, I mean, it was a disappointing season in the fact that the analogy that I've used countless times now, and Bob was probably sick of hearing it, is I thought when you were talking about 2015-16, like Blashill's first season, like they did make the playoffs. They got bounced in the first round easily. Tampa Bay, I think. And, which, was Yzerman's team. I think it's almost like they were jumping into the pool and you're sinking, right? You're sinking all the way to the bottom.
Like an anchor.
Like an anchor. You're hitting at one point. Like, you jump in a pool, you pencil dive, your feet touch the ground, right? You hit rock bottom, and that was that season where they should have picked first and they picked fourth and ended up getting Lucas Raymond, which, hey, that worked out. But this year was where I expected them to push off the bottom of the pool and their toes would leave the floor. I don't think their toes have left the floor. I think the heels did. I think they're still on the floor. This is where I need them to like be halfway up the pool, and then eventually you're gasping for air where, hey, I'm in the playoffs now, right? Now I'm alive. So that's what I expect for next season. But
yeah, that's the tip where they fired Blashill, and that's where, like you mentioned, the heels. You mentioned that once on your videos, on one of your videos, where the Red Wings fired Jeff Blashill and Huda and Salako. That's where they finally hit rock bottom after their route losses. Well, hey, it's like metaphoric science and stuff.
And I think the one thing I was kind of worried about when I wanted him gone kind of during the season after those losses, it's embarrassing. I've never really seen a coach keep a job after those type of losses. I mean, multiple, right? But I think Yzerman's mind was already made up that like he's gone. I was worried about him, quote unquote, ruining some of the young guys. Like one guy that stick out for me is Zadina. I really have high hopes for him. Now they're lessened. I mean, I hope he can be a smidgen of what Thomas Tatar was, and that's just not what you want from a 6th overall pick. But with a new coach, like who can it be? And I know you were talking about, who could Yzerman be looking at? There's a ton of people. It can be literally anybody. I mean, I don't think he's going to limit his search in any way. That's what I took from his presser. He said, I'm looking everywhere. It might be something where you have obviously that personal connection.
Especially overseas.
And that's something that has been done before, but it's rare, and sometimes there's assistant coaches and things like that. I mean, you were talking about it, your last episode about, we're talking about like Fedorov, Larionov, Romberg, Richard Gronberg. There's a lot of NCAA coaches as well. What I will say is I don't think it's Larionov because he just re-signed. So I don't think he's leaving. I really don't.
He only coached the juniors.
Yeah, and I don't really think Sergei Fedorov is coming because, I mean, he's now head coach in the KHL. He's not going to leave his country to come back. And
I think he's comfortable over there too.
They just won the championship, right? So
I believe so.
You're going to come back, try and run it back. So I don't think – I think it's a pipe dream. I really do.
I would assume so. I would assume they won the championship in the KHL. Yeah.
You know what it feels like in Wings fans? It's kind of cool, but they bring back Yzerman. They signed Lidstrom to come back this year, and it almost is like I'm a big Marvel fan, so I don't know if you've ever watched that Infinity War movie where Thanos has the the Infinity Gauntlet, right?
Hmm.
He's got the Infinity Gauntlet,
Mhm.
and he's putting the gems in, right? That's what it feels like. Is they want Fedorov just to kind of complete the set. Maybe it's not even a fit, right? But
What I think another person they were missing was Brendan Shanahan, but he's the president of
Toronto.
hockey operations for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They signed him to a 6-year extension. Oh my God, I'm gonna miss him for a long time as a Red Wing. And I still have a couple
There he
Red Wing
is.
jerseys,
Oh
including
yeah.
this.
Said my
Yeah, I
wife's
am.
got the one Shanahan jersey from the Winter Classic when they played Toronto, but they had the alumni games at Comerica Park. We actually went to both of those, so they
Mhm.
had different alumni jerseys than the Winter Classic jerseys. So we were going through Comerica, and she grabbed the Shanahan one. I think I got an Yzerman one somewhere in my closet. I got a ton of jerseys. But yeah, man, Shanny coming home would be cool too. But I mean, what's he going to do? He's basically the overseer of Steve Yzerman. That's not going to work, right? Yzerman's your guy. So
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Uh, Even if Fedorov and Shanahan don't come back, to be honest, I would still like their numbers retired, especially Fedorov's.
Fedorov's, and the reason is because of the way he left, right? With signing the RFA with Carolina, and then leaving for Anaheim, and basically taking the money. And I think that sat sour with a lot of Red Wings fans. I mean, I didn't really care. I was like, you know what, he's gonna go, and really, since he left Detroit in 03,
I don't blame him.
he went with Anaheim, Columbus, and then ended with Washington. He wasn't the same, but when he came back for that game that we were at, second loudest cheer was behind Yzerman was Sergei Fedorov, because it was the first time that he really came back and wore that logo again, and the fans embraced him, right? And now it is something where I go, because the GMs have a say in who gets their numbers retired. With Ken Holland being there, he was the one that Fedorov walked away from. Yzerman
Yeah.
now being the GM,
Ken
maybe
Holland
it's
was
a
a
little more
jerk.
likely. Maybe it's a little more likely that they'll get Fedorov. I mean,
Nice truth
eventually,
detection.
there you go. And then Zetterberg is next, and then another one too is like Datsuk. Now there's a bunch of players like Zetterberg, Datsuk, Cronwall. Their numbers are not being used right now. Konstantinov's is honored. Larry Ari's is honored. So there's like 5 or 6 in the rotation that they're just not handing out. It's not that they're retired; they're not giving them away again. So
Right.
it was almost that awkward thing of like when Shanahan left in 06. I'm trying to think who wore 14. Well, Derek Meach right after that. So they didn't
Derek
care.
Meach,
They're like,
yeah.
hey, we'll just give it away. But they're not going
14's
to
been
do
my
that.
lucky number,
Yeah. So
personally, because
Bobby
Shanahan
Fabry.
was a major goal scorer
Oh, he was.
for the
I mean, he was
Wings.
a big part of the 97 team. That trade that they made, getting rid
Yeah.
of Primo and Coffey, was like, at the time, was like, holy shit, like, what do you do? And they bring in Shanahan. I mean, he was the missing piece, big power forward. Like, for that game, he was dynamite.
He was
Like,
a secret weapon,
he really was. And I mean,
a sharp
terrible
angle
skater,
shooter.
terrible skater. I mean, like, you go back and look at, it's like, how is this guy scoring 40? Like, because he could shoot, he was big, and he was mean.
He could snipe.
Perfect. And he could snipe.
Sharp
Yeah,
angle.
for sure. 100%.
So many.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But more about Jeff Blashill. The media was like coddling him, even after he was fired. He said he's a good guy, and I'm sure he'll get another NHL gig. Here's the truth: he's not quite NHL caliber. Granted, he won an AHL Calder Cup with the Grand Rapids Griffins, the Red Wings AHL affiliate, in 2013. But I just didn't see an NHL caliber soul inside Blashill as a head coach, because the Red Wings entered the 2016 Stanley Cup playoffs despite him, and since then they haven't even made it since. They just kept getting worse.
So I'll drop a truth bomb on you, and it's more fun to be controversial and just disagree just because it's more fun. So Detroit was terrible. So the fact that they made, I'll argue the fact that they made the playoffs that year was impressive, but it's because Larkin's rookie season, he made the All-Star game. They still had Datsuk. They still had Zetterberg, right? So it was kind of the tail end of it. So it was like, okay, they made it, but it was also Ken Holland still pushing to get that, to keep the streak alive. Remember the streak? Everyone was
Exactly. The playoff streak.
That's
That's all Ken Holland and his fans cared about.
But also, another truth is Mike Ilitch, when he was alive, was the one that kept pushing for that and was the one that was saying, no, we're not rebuilding. Go for it. I don't have that much time left. You could see it with Prince Fielder getting signed to the Tigers and all these crazy signings, right? Bringing in Alfredson, bringing it, like trying to keep it going where maybe giving Ken Holland the benefit of the doubt, for a fact is not something that I do, but it's something where I go, if he was being told, hey man, your job is to go and make this team better no matter what. I don't care what it does in the future. You got to do it, man. Like, but it wasn't the right thing to do. If you're talking about running the franchise and keeping it going, they should have been rebuilding back in 2014, 15, maybe when Lidstrom retired. They should have been like, okay, that's it. Because you're seeing the same thing happen with the Chicago Blackhawks right now. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen with the Penguins in a few years as well, because that Brian Rust deal is eerily similar. Now, I'm not going to say Brian Rust is he's better than Justin Abdelkader, but that deal is identical to the Justin Abdelkader contract, 30 years old, 6 years. That's going to look bad in like 2 years. So right. I think you're going to see Pittsburgh do that too, where it's like, maybe you guys should kind of retool this, but they're going to push for it again with that core three. I mean, if they can bring them all back. But that's what happened with the Wings. They kept pushing for it. Yeah. So, I mean,
even after Mike Ilitch passed away, Ken Holland was still running this team the same way Mike Ilitch wanted him to.
Well, right.
Until obviously he just ran this team to quicksand, and they sunk below it when they stopped making the playoffs.
Yeah, we did a video about a year ago. It was before last season. It was basically the turnover of the Red Wings from when Yzerman came in to before this season. And the turnover was insane. And it was getting rid of Ken Holland's guys, bringing in his own. And I think if you look at the roster now, if you look at maybe his draft picks and stuff, there's only like 5 or 6 left. Like, it's insane, the quickness of how Yzerman flipped this team over, where I was so used to just kind of small changes. And it was like, I was looking forward to that rebuild. But when you're trading all your assets to keep pushing for the playoffs, to get the 7th or 8th playoff seed, get donked in 5 games, and you're giving up draft picks, prospects that are still in the NHL, by the way, Kelly Yarncroke and Matthias Janmark. There's guys you gave them up for, like Eric Cole, David Legwand, and
washed up veterans.
Yeah, the corpse of Eric Cole. Like, you're gonna pay for that. Yeah, you're gonna pay for that. Now we're seeing the flip side of it, where they have so many draft picks. It's coming out everywhere.
Almost had Dion Phaneuf, by the way.
Oh God. Fuck me. But that guy, I mean, yeah, that would have been.
But even Dion Phaneuf didn't want to play for Holland.
I mean, at that point, it's like you can look as a player and go, "Hey, man, they are getting older. Look at the contracts. Hey, anybody can pull up. I got it right here. I mean, everybody can pull up Cap Friendly and look at it and go, I mean, that looks terrible. I mean, if you look at the Red Wings back in like 2015, it's like that is a disaster waiting to happen. I'm not signing there, right?
Right. No.
Unless you're like Mike Commodore. I don't know. But what's that going to do?
Yeah, even Commodore didn't do shit.
Because he hated Babcock.
Right.
You ever see him on Twitter? You follow him on Twitter?
Oh, Babcock?
Commie? No, Commie.
Oh, Commodore. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's on Twitter.
He's posting all the time. Bab's a piece of shit.
Yeah, I don't blame him. And Commodore's right. And Jeff Moss, a former creator of the Detroit Sports Rag, Jeff Moss, was pointed out that Jeff Blashill was like Mike Babcock 2.0.
He sounded just like him. But he was an assistant with him for a few seasons, right? And he was, I mean, groomed as the next guy. And that's the thing. I saw a tweet from myself. I mean, or was it Facebook? No, it was Facebook. You know how you get the memory. I saw the other day, it was like last week when Jeff Blashill, like 6 or 7 years ago, got signed to the Red Wings. I was like excited. I was like, okay, here we go. Like
7 years. Yep.
Don't worry. Babcock's gone. We need a new voice. Right. And they did. And even Zetterberg said, he's like, yeah, sometimes he nicely said, we need a new voice. Sometimes it wears thin. And Blashill at that point had been, like you pointed out, successful at every level into the AHL, winning the Calder Cup. So there was kind of that expectation of like, if we keep it going. So I guess I'll throw an argument at you here, is that it's more, I think it was more Ken Holland's fault that this team stunk than Jeff Blashill. I think you're seeing Jeff Blashill, I think, still has a pretty good reputation in the league because he's coaching with the U.S. World Championship team right now. Like, he's still getting these opportunities, and I think he will end up on an NHL bench, maybe not as the head coach, maybe as an assistant for now, but he's going to be like, it wasn't, and Yzerman said this, and I swear to God, I want to get a t-shirt with this on it. He said halfway through the press conference, he was like, oh, wait a minute, I should probably say, like, Jeff Blashill's a good coach, and he had to, like, say, you know, he handled everything kind of gracefully. I know you're talking about the truth, and I know the media doesn't ask the tough questions to him, but at the same time, he said he made sure that this wasn't a complete shit show. And it made me laugh because Yzerman literally said that. Pardon my French. It wasn't a complete shit show. Now, I kind of disagreed in terms of, yeah, you're losing 9-1. And that's a shit show to me. But in terms of the media, this isn't Toronto. If this was Toronto or any team in Canada, I mean, they'd shoot this guy out of a cannon a year ago.
Yeah,
right?
but it's Detroit.
Yeah, no one's
too much loyalty.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if I listen to a press conference like that, you're not going to get those questions. Yzerman's not going to tell you something anyway. But with Blashill, it's like no one's really picking and choosing like, okay, here's what happened in the game. This is the fact, right? I'm going to ask you about that fact and go, well, what were the decisions that you made that resulted in that? And don't let it go. Because it's easy to be like, hey, like an open-ended question. Hey, tell me what went wrong out there. He's going to make some shit up. Be like, hey, your power play is 13% or whatever you want to say. Or like, it's terrible. You know, have you changed anything? Because it looks like you haven't. Or to be very specific and get these answers out of them because that's what the fans want, right? There's nothing more useless than the coach press conference and a player interview during a game in the intermission. They're going to say the same thing.
Especially to the Detroit media, such as Ansar Khan, Helene St. James, Moss calls her scarf. Art Regner.
Oh, why? She's always wearing a scarf? Is that what it is?
He just calls her scarf as a parody name.
Well, Art Regner is always during the I've seen some insane tweets about him. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Art Regner's a big shill and a homer.
He's very loud. I will say that. Like when he's on during the intermissions, when you're at a game, I know if you haven't been at a game in a while, like he comes on in the intermissions with Daniela Bruce sometimes, and then they'll have like a guest like Drew Miller or Jamie, or not that Jamie, it was like ex Red Wings, right? And anytime that those other two are talking, if he pops up, it's like the volume goes way up, and I'm like, holy God, dude, stop yelling. Like, it's okay.
Regner was a loudmouth, man. When's he gonna retire? Almost, I don't know. Yeah, I can compare him to Mickey Redmond.
I love Mickey. But I love him because he's a homer. Because he's unabashed. He knows he is. He's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't give a shit. Like, I love it. Like, there's homers out there where you're like, okay, you take like Jack Edwards in Boston takes it a little bit too far, where it's like, yeah, Marchand just elbowed a guy in the chin and he's down with a concussion. He's like, oh, like Marchand just kind of fell into him. It's like, really? Like, you can call the game both ways and kind of have that homer-ish. But like Mickey has no like bad blood in him, right? Like he's like your grandfather, right? He's just babbling away about who the hell knows, right?
Right, the past.
And Daniels calls a goal, and you hear just Mickey in the background. It's like, oh, it's like, what are you talking? Turn his mic off. It's hilarious. I love it. I want more of that. I want more Mickey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting old. Yeah, at least there's Chris Osgood and Larry Murphy. I think they're.
I love Ozzy on the pod. I love Ozzy on the panel. I was talking about that with Bobo off there. I was talking about how he was so shy, and like obviously, I was the same way when I started doing this. And I mean, when me and Bobo started this, we were like, we don't care if anyone watches or listens. This is more like for us, it's a passion. We love doing it. It's fun. But I was the same way. I was like, oh, I'm kind of like, I don't know what to say or do. I was afraid to screw up. Osgood was afraid to screw up at the beginning. Now he's seasoned pro. He knows which camera he's looking at. He knows the stats. He's throwing stuff at you that you're like, oh, that's cool. Good to know, right?
Right.
When you go and listen to the intermission and he's on it, I listen to what he says. There's sometimes the funny thing that I hear about Larry Murphy is he'll always say like, oh, this is a guy. Like he always says that. Thanks, Murph. Like, can you maybe tell me a little bit more about that? Or you just going to say he's a guy and we'll move on? But I love Ozzy. Ozzy's the best on that panel. I love it. And even when he calls, he does the color when Mickey's not there. You know, I love listening to Ozzy for sure.
There you go. That's the point. Yeah.
Get Ozzy in there as goalie coach. Let's go.
Yeah, I know.
He'd be solid, I think.
We could. Just don't give up too many rebounds like Osgood did as a goaltender.
Hey, when you have Lidstrom and Rafalski and Cronwall in front of them, I think you're all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we talked about the options for Blashill's replacement. Fedorov's probably not coming back. Larionov's definitely not coming back. Mm-hmm. I mentioned Roger Ronberg. You mentioned him too on your season review video.
Yeah.
That was the only option only best option that I came up with. Do you have any other? Do you see any other options out there?
Yeah, I do. Now again, I don't know anything. I'm not an insider, but it's just. What do you think Yzerman's going to do? It's like trying to guess the weather in 3 years. You have no clue, right? But, you know, you look at the list that people come up with, that maybe who's available, like Roger Ronberg, okay, Frölunda. Now, I look at it and go, why are they saying Roger Ronberg? It was pretty simple. It's Frölunda. The Red Wings have like 4 or 5 prospects. I don't say 4 or 5 now because a few of them left, but they've had a bunch of prospects come through the Frölunda system, like Raymond, Edvinsson, like all their good guys, right? Soderblom, and then they had Niederbach, he moved though. He's going to be playing, and I forget where he's going to be next year. Johansson was Fagerstad. What a loser! I know all this, but but I think with Ronberg, that's the only reason, and he has been successful. I mean, they didn't win it this year. Fagerstad won the SHL, but
almost.
Yeah, almost, but. What I've heard about Roger Ronberg is that and tell me if you've heard or if you've seen this before in a Red Wings coach. He's rigid. He doesn't change a whole lot. He doesn't have a lot of personality and doesn't make, tactical changes during a game. What does that sound like to you? Sounds like Jeff Blashill to me, right?
Yeah, I know.
Do we want another Blashill here? I mean, so I look at that and go, maybe not. The one that people say is Rickard Gronberg. Now, if you haven't, have you heard of him?
Rickard Ronberg.
Rickard Gronberg is from Zurich. I mean, he's a Swedish guy.
There we go.
Doing really well in the Swiss league, but like they're winning championships and stuff like that. There's a really funny one. It was on, I think, our pod that we showed, but we couldn't put the audio on because he's swearing like crazy. But he's yelling at another coach, and he's pretty intense. Like when I looked at it, I went, this guy's intense. He's got the beard. He's got the like slick back hair. He's wearing a blazer. Like I wouldn't fuck with this guy, but I don't know anything about his coaching style. But now we talk about guys that have been let go, and there's always this coaching carousel, which I honestly I hate. I honestly think you're gonna hear who Detroit gets as a head coach and go, who? Because that's what happened with Yzerman's only 2 hires in the NHL. Guy Boucher and John Cooper never coached in the show, right? And he hired both of them. And to an extent, Guy Boucher was successful when he brought him on. The first year, they made the conference final. Like that when Yzerman was a GM. Obviously, during a rebuild, like Yzerman could have kept that going. He went and looked at it and went, this team is not built to last. Yeah, we would be good for a few years, but it's flawed. And I'm going to, Dwayne Rollison's 43 and he's my starter. Like I got to rebuild this. And they did. And I think Guy Boucher was kind of the Jeff Blashill of that Tampa Bay era where they were kind of, dwindling and adding draft picks, and where Yzerman was finding the Kucherovs, the Palats, signing Tyler Johnson, drafting Vasilevsky, making some trades to bring in talent. And then eventually you bring in your guy.
Steven Stamkos.
Yeah, and Hedman, right? And I mean, you trade for Sergachev. You get rid of St. Louis and LeCavalier, 2 Tampa Bay legends and captains, right? I mean,
they won the Stanley Cup in 2004.
Yeah, the balls on you that you could do that is insane to me. That means to me, Yzerman could trade anybody. He could trade Larkin tomorrow. Like, I don't know. People say he's untouchable. I go, Is he though? I mean, if the right deal came along, Yzerman would fire him out of a cannon if he got a haul for him for sure.
Because he
But
means business.
he means business, and that's why I love it, because he's going to do what's best for the team. When he signed Mantha to a 4-year deal and traded him like 3 months into the deal, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe he did that. But the return coming back was awesome. So, but the whole coaching carousel, like I said, John Cooper, obviously 2-time Stanley Cup champion. Who's the John Cooper now, right? Because we know that Jeff Blashill was the Guy Boucher. So John Cooper, who's it going to be? You're going to be, Barry Trotz. I mean, you definitely pick up the phone and call him, just to see if there's a fit there. Is it like Pete DeBoer? God, I hope not, because I mean, he's kind of torched the Sharks. He torched the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, who else is out there? Lane Lambert was out there, but that's why they got rid of Trotz, I think, to keep him in the Islanders. You hear names like Tortorella, and
Torts is retired.
I don't want Tortorella. I want to find someone, that maybe I don't know. And there's NCAA coaches that are out there that he could go after. There was, and I can't think of his name now, but I think it's Tampa Bay's. It might be Tampa Bay's farm team coach. Like, it's a guy that Yzerman knows, and I think it's going to be something like that. There is that connection. He's said that there's sometimes where if you hire somebody that you don't really like, Guy Boucher, you don't really know him, right? To work closely with them, to go, hey, do we have the same similar interests here?
I've heard of him.
I mean, if Barry Trotz was to come here, he's been doing this forever. Obviously, he's a good coach. I can't really believe that the Islanders let him go. Obviously, I think it's more about the Islanders believing in Lane Lambert than not believing in Barry Trotz, because Trotz is getting up there in age. Would Trotz want to come here? I don't know. I mean, he's probably going to want to go to a team that's made to win now. Like, one fit that everybody says Vegas. I think where he interviewed first with Winnipeg might be a perfect fit for him, because Winnipeg underachieved this year, in my opinion. And when Paul Maurice, who also is out there for coaching, said they needed a new voice, I mean, that could be it. Could Trotz come here and work with Steve Yzerman? Because I've heard some rumors of like Trotz wants to kind of do a little bit of management, and like, does he want to coach? Obviously, he's interviewing for it, so he's listening.
Right.
But could he coexist with Steve Yzerman? Absolutely. Yeah, they could.
Could be anybody.
But I think, and I can't even go through an NCAA list because I don't know any of the guys, right? But I guess it's something where when they do hire somebody, you go, okay, I'm just going to look and see who this guy is. I'll learn about him. And I've learned that when Steve Yzerman drafted Mo Seider 6th overall a few years ago, because I didn't know who the hell that was either. I guarantee you didn't either. I didn't know him. He was mocked to go like 24th.
Right, but that's
overall.
why. But that's why I read the articles first before I even give a grade.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about who I think they should maybe pick this year at 8. But when Yzerman was asked, like, wow, I think it was Elliot Friedman was like, wow, Steve, the first, shocker of the draft, what did you see? And he's like, well, Yzerman's like, it's not a shocker to us. Like, we had him as our number 1 defenseman on our list. He's like, I know he was mocked like lower, but we think he's the best guy. He's not going to be there with our 2nd pick. We tried to trade down, didn't happen, so we're taking him now. And he's like, go Google him, YouTube him. I think he's going to be awesome. I'm like, you know what? Okay. Like, they know what they're talking about. We don't. Like, in terms of prospects, I can't stand it when I see someone on Twitter or YouTube like breaking down stuff. I'm like, all you did was look at a YouTube video and watched his highlights. Or you like the sound of his last name because it sounds sexy and it would look cool on a jersey. Like, I don't know. Like, the scouts don't even know, right? Like, they're wrong most of the time. So let's just kind of see what happens. I'm at the point now where I'm like, whoever they get at 8 is going to be good, I think, because look at the track record, the last 2 years, the track record, 3 years even, with Seider, Raymond. I mean, hopefully Costa's a elite franchise goalie. That would be sweet. And then now Edvinson's looking awesome too. I mean, geez, it's like Yzerman's not missing on these picks. He's going to get someone good.
Those are keepers.
100%.
Yeah, no matter where the Red Wings go in the lottery, and they stayed 8, by the way, Yzerman can draft, period. Lucas Raymond, what my knee-jerk reaction when he drafted him live was, who's he? But when I saw the highlights, Lucas Raymond was the next Andreas Athanasiou, for God's sake. I was like,
Well,
wow.
I mean, he shoots better than Athanasiou. I mean, I'd say Double A was faster than him. I mean, I'd say the one
Yeah.
thing
Shoots
that
more
if you
accurately.
sure, I mean, if you look at Lucas Raymond's game, the thing that I think he'll improve steadily with is his skating. He's not like the strongest skater. I mean, if he gets a little bit quicker, right? I mean, go skate some laps with Larkin or something, because I think he would be dynamite just to beat guys off the half wall, like on a rush. Right now he's kind of snapping it from the top of the circle. If you had a step on a guy, he had so many more options. He's going to pot like 5 or 10 more goals just from being a slight step quicker. But yeah, the drafting, I mean, it's something where I just kind of leave it, right? And I mean, even Yzerman was like, I'll take credit for the first rounders, but after that, if the scouts are making the picks, right? Hacken Anderson is going to come up in the 4th or 5th round and be like, hey, take Albert Johansson, right? I mean, that guy's going to be a stud too. I mean, when I have a lineup here of projected who I think is going to be on the team next year, he might be on it too. I mean, there's some interesting names on here, that's for sure. And I mean, guys that you could look at free agency, but obviously it starts with the coach. But Yzerman did say it could be like, obviously before training camp, but it might take a while. He's going to do his due diligence because you want the right guy. You don't want to screw this up and go, oh man, a year or two into this, and this is not the guy for this team. But you need a guy that's going to be a tactician, that's going to be able to look at the players that he has and coach tactically with them, right? I mean, not to just take this rigid system and shove it in there and go, okay, this is the system, even if the players aren't going to thrive in it. You know what I mean? So he'll find the right guy. I have no doubt that he's going to, and I know him, and
Definitely.
He's slappy for sure. But until he gives me a reason not to be a slappy, I'm going to just think everything he does is awesome. So
Especially after firing Blashill, I believe in Yzerman.
yeah, see ya. Yeah,
Yes.
that was the first time, and I asked the question. I asked Bobo. I said, "Hey, like for me, I go, if he doesn't gas him, is this the first time you question Steve Yzerman?" I got a lot of responses that were like, "Oh no," and this and that. And I went, "I think it would be because really, like, this is the guy. I mean, this is where you want to get a little bit better, but." It would be interesting to see Jeff Blashill get a team that's like playoff bound and see what he does with them then, right? To get a good roster finally, right? Because even now he didn't really have a lot, right? I mean, the new guy coming in, I think it's gonna be a tough transition because it's gonna be kind of the same team next year. There's not gonna be a ton of changes.
Yeah, I see that too. But this is the perfect segue to the rest of the Red Wings roster. Larkin is staying put, of course. Seider, Raymond, they both had really good seasons. De Kaiser's going to be gone. Grice was horrendous. He's gone. Alex Nedeljkovic is staying put. The Red Wings might have to sign a backup goaltender behind Ned. Hronek, still give him time.
I wish I could screen share this with you. It's on my other computer here, but like, I mean,
that's okay. You can read it out loud.
Hey, here we go. Let's do it, right?
Yes.
This is Bushy's expertise here, which I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt, right? Okay, so to be a realist, though, right? I'm not going to be like, hey, they should go out and get Johnny Gaudreau. It's not happening. It's like he's not coming here. So, I mean, he's an amazing player, but you're not paying a guy that much to come in here, and he's not going to come here anyway.
No, Yzerman's not Ken Holland.
No, you're not. And I mean, hey, the thing is, if Ken Holland pulled that off, that'd be kind of sweet. But he's not. I'm just saying, Johnny Gaudreau is the best player available right now, unless Calgary re-signs him. But okay, so I mean, your first line, Bertuzzi, Larkin, Raymond, they're staying put. The nice thing about the Wings, looking at their cap situation, their top 9 are basically locked in next year as well. So now you finally have a core of like 6 to 9 players that can kind of grow together, that are on very reasonable contracts that you can kind of work with. You're not having that much turnover. Like looking next year, they really have nobody to sell at the trade deadline. There's nobody. I mean, if we go through it, I mean, you kind of can. I mean, if they tank it, you can move Bertuzzi, you can move Suter. I mean, I don't know if you're going to do that. I don't think they'll move those guys. They'll bring them back, but it is nice to see that they do have these guys. So Bertuzzi, Larkin, Raymond, first line, and then you got Vrana, a full season of Jacob Vrana. He might pot 40. Like, he was unbelievable this year. I mean, that guy can shoot. I have the second line center position vacant, and I'll talk a bit about who I think they should put there. I put Phillips Zadina on the second line because I think with another coach, that's where I would like him to be, because when he had his opportunities on the top line this year, like if Bertuzzi was playing in Canada or couldn't play in Canada, Zadina could go up. He did produce. Other than that, he didn't have a good season. Like, third line, I really like because Robbie Fabry, they just signed him a few more years. That's going to be a nice pickup. $4 million for the next 3 is actually a really nice number for Fabry.
Fabry can score.
He can. Pius Suter was actually a really nice pickup as well. I think he had a terrific season. I think he's a solid like third line center. I think he's a great third line center option. He was kind of shoved into the second line, and I think that was a little bit. I don't say a little bit much for him because he did perform, but I think on a playoff team, he's a third line center. And then, I mean, the biggest surprise for me, and he was a little bit of my whipping boy at the beginning of the season. He was the one shining light. I would never have called it Michael Rasmussen. I couldn't believe the season, the second half that he had with the opponents they had. He was the one that was scoring. He was finally using his body. He's a big dude, right? And
during the home stretch.
He used to play like Bambi, and I don't know what the hell happened if someone pissed in his cereal, but like he came out firing. So I love the game for Michael Rasmussen, but when he was on the wing is when he was actually effective. When he was on center, not so much, a little bit too much responsibility defensively. On the wing, he was dynamite. So I would keep him there because Detroit has a plethora of centers. And then on the fourth line right now, I have Sundqvist, who they got in the Letty deal. Mitch Stevens, who was hurt for most of the year. And I was actually, I thought the Stevens signing was one of the very underrated ones that I
Mitchell Stevens?
Yeah, because he's basically a Luke Glendening replacement, but I think he has a higher like ceiling. Not that he's going to become anything more, but I do like having a player like that on the fourth line. And then a guy that's going to push for a spot is Jonathan Bergeron, because he had an amazing season with Grand Rapids. I think 60 points. He set like a rookie record for the Griffins. I think he has a chance to really make the team. I mean, you do have a lot of guys that would be like scratches. Giovanni Smith is still here. I don't think he's that effective. Adam Ernie, I didn't even put on the roster. He's gonna be there, but he didn't have a good year. I mean, his shooting percentage the season before was insanely high, and there's obviously no way that was going to happen again this year, and we saw that. I mean, kind of looking Carter Rowney's probably gone. He's very replaceable. I was talking about that.
Yeah.
And then Bergeron. I mean, Veleno. That's another one that actually I missed him because he was hurt at the end of the year. But Veleno is another one that had a good season. Can he eventually turn into that second line center? I think that's why I left it blank. Is he could? I mean, he was a first round pick, 30th overall. We'll see. But the one spot that I would say if they were going to sign somebody would be for that second line center spot. If Suter and Veleno weren't ready for it, obviously that this team is what it is. But 3 guys that I really like. One is pretty obvious. It's Vinny Trocheck from the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, we'll talk some advanced stats here. You want to do a little bit of that?
Used to play for the Panthers. Yes, please bring them here.
Oh, okay. Right. Let's get this nice. Okay, Vinny Trocheck. So on a really good Carolina team. So he's 28 years old. He had 51 points this year. 21 goals, 30 assists, pretty damn good. Plus 21. Played almost every game. Played 81.
And the Hurricanes are still alive, too.
And they are. And, I mean, if you are a Red Wings fan, I would urge you to watch that Carolina and Rangers series because he is standing out. I really like his game. He's on a very, 4.8 he's making this year, 4.8 mil. So I like that number for 51 points for 21 goals. It's pretty damn good. On a good team, obviously. I think his time on ice, he is getting treated like a second liner, which is where I think he would be on the Red Wings anyway, behind Larkin. But even strength offense is what I look at, and that's what Detroit needs, and the power play. He's decent defensive. I mean, he's in the 77th percentile for even strength offense, which is in obviously the upper half of the league. Power play percentage 83%, which is nice. He does kill some penalties. He's not awesome at it. He is above average in his goals per 60, assists per 60. I love his numbers, and he doesn't take a ton of penalties, and he's not playing
Good.
with anyone really like spectacular either. He's playing with really good players.
Very disciplined, at least.
Yeah, so I do like Vinny Trocheck. I think you could get him, but he's probably going to want he's probably going to want a 7-year deal. Like, but the thing is then he's still 35. But I mean, if you could get Vinny Trocheck for like 4 or 5 years, I would definitely look at him. Another one that you could look at that you get for cheaper is probably Ryan Strome from the Rangers. Now, the Rangers, again, that's another they're in the same series. Go watch it. Very, very similar player. Extremely similar. 21 goals, 33 points, or 33 assists, 54 points in 74 games. Yeah, right. So it's something where like Ryan Strome, man. Wouldn't have thought that, but still, he's getting paid 4.5, which is very similar to Trocheck. His even strength offense is 80th percentile, power play 71 percentile, even strength defense exactly the same as Trocheck. They're like identical players. So either of those guys, and they can both play the wing if they need to, which is nice because you do have a lot of centers in Suter, Veleno, Larkin, Stevens, Rasmussen can play there too. And then the last guy, which I was looking at this beforehand, and I just added him to the list because I kind of looked into him a little bit more. Is Evan Rodriguez?
Okay.
Pittsburgh Penguins, and he's getting paid $1 million this year. And I mean, 19 goals, 24 assists, right? 43 points in 82 games, played every game for the Penguins. Now and it's one of these things where he's playing with like average line mates too. He's playing a lot on the power play as well, where he's actually weirdly not effective. He gets a lot of his goals even strength. Again, that's something that I like. Compete level's pretty high, 71st percentile.
Is he not used on the power play too often?
Well, you think about it, right? I mean, they got Crosby, Malkin. You're putting he's not on the top unit.
They're still on that roster,
and neither's Trocheck, right? So it's one of those things where, like, I mean, deploying him with the Red Wings. I mean, would that be a nice, nice get for them? Someone might. He's 28 years old. I mean, these guys are all 28. Looking at every single one of them, they're 28 years old, and that there's a reason for that. Is because I don't want anybody over 30. I don't want to pay a 31-year-old for 5 seasons. I'm not doing it. Right? Not now. Maybe when we're going for it, that's where you can stomach that a little bit more to, get a guy that's going to add something to your team. But those would be the 3 forwards that I would like to fill that spot. I don't know, like any of those guys jump out at you, because I know none of them would really make anyone like super excited. It's not like, oh my God, we got Johnny Gaudreau. Like, you're not getting him. So let's be realistic and look at some of those options. There's obviously other guys, but out of those 3, if they could get one of them, and if it was for the right price and the right cap hit, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah. And sometime this summer, this offseason, Yzerman had better get on that phone.
Oh, he's going to. And I mean, in his press conference, he did say
he wants to win now.
Well, and here's the thing. It's like, what do they want to do? Are they pushing off the floor of the pool, right? Because if so, you're only doing a deal. You're doing a deal like this, where, okay, we're adding a guy that's going to help us this year get better, and that could be here when we're going to be good, right? So they're not going for it this year. What I would expect, I guess I should have started with that. What I would expect for the Red Wings this season is that you're in the playoff hunt at the end of the year. You're playing meaningful games at the end of March, right? That in the trade deadline, you're like, are we buying? Maybe, like, can we look at maybe getting a guy?
Are we good enough?
Are we good enough to even be in the conversation of, hey, I'm going to call a team and go, I want that guy, like, because they've been selling for like 6 seasons, right? They haven't been buying yet. And I mean, even this year, they sold the guys that they had, Leddy, Nemesnikov. You got a few things for them, but I think one of those guys plugging them in on defense, it's like, I don't know if there's a lot of help coming. I mean, Seider obviously is your number one. I have
he uses his body to hold pucks in the offensive zone.
I just watched this morning. Germany was playing. They were playing Kazakhstan, and Germany won. But I mean, it's a men among boys, but it's weird because it's the complete opposite. He's 20 years old playing against men, just dummying them, and I was shocked at how good he was, because I remember watching him. I think it was pre-COVID. His first after he was drafted, he played a few exhibition games, and I mean, he looked lost. He looked like he was 18, but obviously few years, playing the SHL, right? He played in Grand Rapids the first season and then went back over and played for Rogel and playing, with men, and he looked awesome. So obviously with the Wings, he's their number one guy going forward, and he's going to win the Calder. I mean, if he doesn't, that's
Definitely.
a joke. But now the next sider, is it Edvinsson? Is it Albert Johansson? I have them kind of both slotted in next to Sider. I think Edvinsson is a very comparable player in terms of like he would be able to play with Sider. I mean, sometimes you look at teams where they'll try to split up their best two defensemen to make two pairs that are like semi-strong, like put another guy with him that's going to help him out. I think putting those two together would be dynamite. My bold take here is that Edvinsson and Johansson both won't make the team. It'll be one or the other. So, in honest, it might be Johansson. Like, don't be surprised if Edvinsson starts in Grand Rapids. It's not a bad thing, right? It's not everyone's Sider. Not everyone's just going to come over and immediately play. But I think one of those guys will get the opportunity to start. And then I do like the top four if it's Sider and one of those two. And then, I mean, one guy that I think is like right now your number 3 is Jake Wallman, which is nuts because you got him for you gave up. This blew my mind. I mean, if I'm St. Louis and Steve Yzerman calls me, hang the damn phone up because you've been fleeced twice now. Because you gave up Robbie Fabry for Jacob De La Rose, who's back in Sweden, and then you just got you traded for Nick Leddy when you had a guy that was basically better than him and Jake Wallman waiting, 6'7" defenseman, and they got Sundqvist and they got the second round pick back, right? They gave up a second round pick to get Leddy from the Islanders. They got it back. And then some. I mean, how the hell? I mean, I was stunned when I heard Jake Wallman played really well for the Wings, and I think it's a guy that you can keep around. And Yzerman has said he was looking at him long before being with the Red Wings, even with Tampa. Hronek had a bad season. I mean, I don't know. I think he's probably on a playoff team, the 4th defenseman. And I mean, really, if you look at some of the teams that are still in the playoffs right now, he'd probably be on the 3rd pair with the way that he played, right? I'm not saying that he can't bounce back because I really hope he does because I have high hopes for Philip Hronek, but he didn't have a good season this year. I don't know what was going on. We just talked about they signed Steve Kampfer. I think that's more of an AHL deal, if anything.
Yeah, Camper. Yeah,
because he came from the KHL and he's played in the show before. Obviously, with Boston was the one that I remembered him from. Gustav Lindstrom, I quietly had a decent season. I think he's one of those guys that because you didn't hear from him a lot, you kind of forget he's on the team. But it's a good thing for your 3rd pair. If I don't hear their name the whole game, they played well. Like that's what I want to hear. I don't need to hear your name 17 times because that means you're probably fucking up. And then you got Jordan Osterley still signed. Do they bring back Mark Stahl? Like I thought he'd be my whipping boy, but I mean he played pretty good and he led the team in plus minus.
I heard
I don't
that.
like plus minus as a stat. I hate plus minus, but I mean on a bad team that's pretty impressive. He played a lot too, so you could get him cheap as well. And there's your 8 right there. De Kaiser's gone. You're not bringing him back, right?
So, no.
He's gone. So is there even room for a free agent to come in here? Yeah, there is, right? We can create competition, and no one's spot is in stone, probably other than Sider. Obviously, I do like Wallman. I mean, Edvinsson and Johansson technically could both start in Grand Rapids. That wouldn't be a bad thing either. And if they both are blowing it up down there, you find a room for them, right?
Yeah, there could only be one roster spot left in the NHL. That could be the reason why.
And like I said, no one's job should be safe after a season like they just had. Everybody's replaceable. I said I got annihilated when I put out a YouTube video before last season about should they look at trading Larkin. I went through all the options and obviously the answer was no, they shouldn't. Now, if he had a catastrophic season this year or he didn't, pan out the way, then maybe you look at it. But people are like, oh, you never trade him. It's like, again, if the right deal came along, I'm sure anyone's expendable on that team, right? But the one guy that I was looking at, and it's because I've been watching this Battle of Alberta, and I'll say this, his advanced stats are not good, okay? So if you look him up and go, what the fuck are you talking about, Bushy? I mean, Nikita Zadorov on the Flames, 22 points this season, plus 11. I'm looking at his even strength defense because I think that's what they need more of. 88th percentile, which is like pretty shocking. But he's a big dude. He's playing like third pair minutes. You wouldn't have to pay him a ton. He's 26 years old, plays both sides. So, I mean, pretty versatile. And he's a big dude. Like, he plays mean. So, if you go and watch this Calgary and Edmonton series and you see, I think he's big number 16, you just trucking people. I mean, I'm like, man, I would love to see that, on the Wings blue line because they don't really have that big dude other than Sider throwing his weight around. So I think Zadorov would be a nice one to look at. And then kind of an underrated one. I mean, I was looking at players that didn't really have an opportunity to play a lot or were injured, maybe need a change of scenery. And again, 26 years old, you're seeing a pattern here with what kind of player I would want. Will Butcher was with the Sabres. He only played 37 games. He had 8 points. He was a -10 on Buffalo. But I think that's something you can get. Again, you made 3.7 mil. He's not going to get that in the open market. No. I think looking at his 19 and 20 stats were really good. And I think that's when he was with the Devils. And he became expendable. They got Dougie Hamilton and, PK Subban, and like he's getting pushed down the depth chart, and they moved him. And I mean, he fell off a cliff the first season. But I think it's just maybe a change of scenery, like give him or bring him in to kind of compete for that bottom five, the 5 or 6 spot. Might be worth it. We'll see if he signs anywhere. You give him a player tryout maybe. So that's something that I could definitely see. But again, there's really no one out there in free agency. If you look, there's no like big studs. I mean, I would love to get John Klingberg from Dallas, but he's already said he wants to come back to the Stars if it fits for them. But I don't think that's someone you're bringing in right now. That's someone you would bring in a few years where it's like he's the last piece of the puzzle on D, because you might have the next kind of Klingberg with Edmondson, and he's cheaper. You don't have to pay him that much. And then you said like obviously Ned's coming back. I really don't understand why people were stroking off Magnus Hellberg so hard. He's 31 years old, played 5 NHL games. I don't know why people start him. Like, he's going to play Toronto and let in 15. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, sure, he played well overseas, but you can bring him in. I mean, you can bring him back as a UFA, but you need him to earn that spot. You don't just give it to him. That would be disastrous. I think he'd probably be worse than Greiss, honestly. But
pretty much everything has to be earned.
Right. And that's the thing is bring him back, but give him some competition. And who I would do to bring that in, there's 3 guys I was looking at. So number 1 is Casey DeSmith from the Penguins, because they have Tristan Jarry. These are all backup goaltenders. So when I look at advanced stats for backups, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm kind of not really too worried about it because they're not going to play that much. Like, I'm more worried about Ned's stats. Like, I'm trying to see what's going to happen here. So I'd say Casey DeSmith would be someone. He's 30 years old. You could throw him in the backup net for sure. Another one that's interesting, I said in my video, is Braden Holtby. He didn't have that good of a season for Dallas, but obviously Jake Ottinger's their guy. I don't know if you saw that last game that Ottinger played in the playoffs there. He had like 60-something saves and like a double.
Yeah, that long overtime game, 4 overtimes.
Unbelievable.
Man, I saw most of it. Then I went to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. But I'm like, that kid is unbelievable. So I mean, they don't.
The 4th overtime was the overtime period that I slept over. I watched the entire through the entire 3rd overtime.
Yeah.
Period.
So I could see Holtby coming and being a backup to Ned because he's won a cup. I mean, he's 32 years old. He'd be cheap. You're not asking him to be Braden Holtby on the Capitals.
Right.
And the 3rd guy, and I think this is probably a pipe dream. I don't see this happening because I feel like this guy would go and probably try to be a starter somewhere. And it depends what they do. But Ville Husso from the Blues, he's actually starting now for them. So this changes things. I made this kind of list before Binnington got run over by Kadri last night, or was it 2 nights ago? And they threw the water bottle at him, which I think is hilarious. But Husso,
why would they do that?
What do you mean?
Oh, I mean, throwing the bottle at Binnington, or is it Kadri?
Oh, so okay. If you didn't see what happened, so
I saw it.
Kadri, yeah, he ran, and I mean, Binnington got hurt. I think it's because Binnington thought like, oh, he ran me on purpose, and then he turned into like a 6-year-old and just like threw a fit. So Kadri was doing an interview on TNT, and you hear like something hit the floor, and he like looks over, and he's like, oh, I think because he was explaining the play, and he's like, I think Bennington just threw a water bottle at me, and he did. So I was like,
Bennington threw a water bottle at Kadri.
Kadri during an interview.
I see.
So, but now they said Bennington's out for the series at least. So Husso's going to start. But he started the playoffs. So that's kind of telling, is like, where do they go? Depends what the Blues want to do. Bennington's under contract. Husso's not. He's going to want a bag, right? He's only making $0.8 million right now.
Husso got drilled.
Well, no, Bennington did, but Husso, yeah, I mean, they lost.
Giving up goals, 5-2.
Right. But
he got burned by that Avalanche offense.
Who wouldn't? I mean, the Avalanche looked fucking unbelievable. I mean, I think they'll win the cup. And that's I don't hate the Avalanche anymore. I'm a hardcore Wings fan. No one's left. I don't care. Go win the cup. I mean,
right. That rivalry was a long time ago. I'm looking at the Avalanche and Lightning as top dogs in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I usually try to come up with someone else, but I'm pretty on board with that. But I think that's kind of where you go with the Wings for now. The other two that the one that I didn't mention is Olli Juolevi, because he's restricted free agent. I don't think they qualify him. I think they let him go because that was just kind of an experiment.
So they made him a UFA then.
Yeah, they didn't really experiment with him though. Like they played him a little bit, but they didn't really give him a huge chance. But Hirose coming back, under a different coach, maybe he plays a little bit more, because I do like him on that second power play. He's like a extremely discounted Johnny Gaudreau. That's what he reminds me of, because he's small, he's shifty, he's good with the puck, but he's not going to bring you a lot of like defense. He's not going to be a hitter. He's pure offense. So you would just put him out there on a second power play. Another dark horse is Pontus Andreasson, who they just signed, 23 years old, coming over from Swedish league. So, if he has a good camp, he could play as well. But other than that, there's really nobody pushing that hard for a roster spot, in my opinion. So that's my breakdown of the Wings and which way they should be going. Maybe some fun free agent acquisitions. If there's a trade to be made, who knows? That would maybe happen at the draft. So it's another thing to kind of keep an eye on, right?
Yep. And we're going to pick up the loose change on who they signed recently. They signed, with a What's Your Great segment, the Wings signed defenseman Steven Kampfer from the Boston Bruins to a 1-year contract. You mentioned like 20 minutes ago. Yeah. What's your grade on Kampfer? Then we'll get to
like I said, I think he's a depth piece, right? I mean, he's not going to move the needle that much for you. I mean, it's like you're bringing in that sixth guy. It's like when they signed Jordan Osterley. Like, it's the same thing. That's how I feel about that one. Does it signal that Stahl's gone? Like, maybe. I mean, does Camp go and play Grand Rapids? Is that, like, I think of it as the player's perspective. Like, he's coming over from the KHL. I don't know if you listen to Spit and Chicklets, but there's some insane KHL stories where some players are like, fuck that, I'm out. So maybe, right? So I think he's just a depth piece. He's not going to move the needle. So, I mean, depth signing. I mean, it's hard to break it down because there's really nothing to break down, right? To kind of put a needle in this one. But, I mean, again, he could push for that sixth spot. He could be on the third pair. He could be the seventh D. Get an opportunity for sure. I don't even have advanced stats on him because he hasn't been in the league for a couple of years.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, what would be your grade right now before you do the advanced stats anytime soon or sometime down the road?
Oh, for Kampfer?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he would just be like he's going to be probably bottom quarter of the league in goals. I mean, you're not looking for goals or points from this guy, right? You're looking for even strength defense. You would look for maybe penalty kill if he was in the lineup, right? That's something where it's like you watch the games to get those, but I don't think. I was kind of confused why they were signing him. It might just signal that Mark Stahl's gone. I think that's what it'd be, because it's a logjam, and it might signal Juolevi, he's gone too. So, and it's also something where I think Yzerman likes creating competition. So, if he's going to Steve Kampfer and he's going like, hey man, if you want an opportunity, I can give you one, but you got to earn it, right? Like, if you don't we're going to waive you. We'll send you to Grand Rapids. That's how it's going to go, right? So maybe that's something that he's okay with.
Yeah.
is just kind of doing that AHL game. I think a lot of guys
Oh.
go to the KHL, play like, professional in the big league over there. They come back and go like, I'm okay playing the American League, right?
My fair grade would be a B minus. And this is
Oh, you're
how.
looking for like a letter grade for him, like for the
Yeah,
signing?
yeah.
Okay. C.
C.
It's
Mid
just
rate
kind of
C.
like, it's average. It's like, we'll see. I don't expect anything from him, but I don't expect him to be terrible. Like,
Right.
he's not going to be my Danny DeKaiser. God, I hope he's not.
No.
I don't know who
No.
the next one is, because I always have one. There's always a guy on the team that is my whipping boy, and it just happens naturally. Now that DeKaiser's gone, like, someone's going to get it. I don't know who it's going to be, though.
Got to see it to believe it.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yep. Here's another guy to grade. Taro Hirose. They signed him to a 2-year contract extension. The Red Wings did.
I'll say now it depends. It depends if he's going to play, because he's was great in Grand Rapids. I think, like, for him, he's like an A minus B plus AHL player. If you put him, like I said, if you put him in the right situation, like, again, these grades do depend on who the coach is going to be as well and how they're going to deploy him. Because when I've seen him deployed on a power play in Detroit, I love what I see. I love that he's the one that the puck is going through most of the time. Like, he's the setup guy. He's never going to be the shooter, but, like, it's the smarts. And I remember watching him. If you know where he played his college hockey, there's a quiz for you. You know where he played his college hockey?
College hockey, like
Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, Michigan State.
Michigan State, yeah.
MSU guy, yeah. So, and he's Canadian from Calgary.
Bingo.
So I remember watching him. It's one of those interesting things where I see a guy, because sometimes I'll go when they used to go at the Joe, they do the Great Lakes Invitational. Michigan State, Tech, and then they invite somebody like Western Michigan or Colorado or something, right? They'd invite somebody in. And,
Colorado College or Boston College.
Like, there'd always be an invite, right? And
or Nebraska, Omaha.
Yeah, and they'd play they'd play 2 games each day. It would be like, Michigan State would play they would never play Michigan. They'd always try to get that the final, but there'd be like the quarterfinal the one day, you get 2 games in the day, and the next day you'd go back, they'd play back to back as well. And I loved it because, like, it's cheap. You go watch the games. But I do remember watching Taro Hirose on MSU thinking, like, this kid, like, he was up for the Hobie Baker. Like, there was one year where he was up for it, and he's like that prototypical, like, NCAA like scorer, where he's smaller, shiftier. Like, you can get away with that stuff in the NCAA. When you get to the show, it's very rare that you're going to get a player like that. Like I said, he's Johnny Gaudreau light. He's like the seltzer version of Johnny Gaudreau, but he's never going to turn into him. But I would give that signing, bringing him back. I know it's a 2-year, which says a lot. Yzerman thinks he's going to probably be a part of this somehow.
No details yet on how much money Hirose's going to get paid.
It'll be under $1 million.
As I know,
it'll be under $1 million for sure. Yeah, it'll be a 2-way deal.
Cheap.
But yeah, it'll be cheap, which is nice, right? So I give the signing like a B plus, because I want to see more. I want to see more of him, and I feel like there were times where he did earn that next game, but then he wouldn't be in the lineup, and then he'd be sent down. So I don't know if that's something, and we don't know the inner workings of like an NHL franchise in terms of who makes that decision. Is it the coach saying I'm scratching him? Like the GM gives him, here's the list. Like you watch Moneyball, with Brad Pitt, and like he's talking about, here's the roster. This is how it's built to be played. And the manager is like, well, I have the lineup card. I'm going to start whoever I want. Like, how does that go? Because if it's Yzerman saying like, well, here he is, play him, and Blash is like, nah, I don't want to play him in this position, whatever. And then Yzerman, well, shit, I'll send him down then. So if it's Yzerman saying, no, he's on the team, you need to use him, then, I can see him being a solid like third liner. But again, wasn't on my lineup. But could he be? Yeah, he could beat some guys out for sure. There's a logjam up front. It's one of those things where I go like, there's going to be some competition on the front and on the back, and I hope they create some in the net.
All right, B plus.
Let's go.
So, speaking of the Red Wings, owners Chris Ilitch and Marian Ilitch and the rest of their family, they own Olympia Development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
they own a lot of things.
Yeah, like a lot of
Well,
parking
in the
lots, for
city.
example.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, Olympia Development, owned by the Illiches, was last month issuing their customers parking tickets, and they were not issued by law enforcement. They were issued by that Illich owned company. And
Hmm.
you told me off the air that you read the article, and it sounds like they've been scamming uh, money from their customers. But uh, from what I've also read too, was one of the service agents from Olympia Development says they would take a look at the issue and make sure it's resolved and whatnot.
Yeah, like the easiest thing for them to do here is like I'm assuming they have cameras, right?
Yeah,
I like
they
again,
have
I'm
to
in
have.
Windsor. We don't have that. Like whenever I go, like here's what I'll say: whenever I go to a Red Wings game, like I come through the tunnel and I kind of zigzag through. I get to Woodward, and I do go in those lots that are kind of it would be on the south side of I-75, so you can see the arena, but it's like a 5 minute walk, and they're like $15, but they're not because it's nice because there's no attendant there. You literally take your card, beep, right, gives you the thing, print it out, arm goes up, you go in, right. When you leave, it's automatic, it opens, you go. There's no person there, but I have parked at places where there's an attendant, he's got the flag, there's the sign, right? And it's one of those things where I go like, those ones to me are a little sketchy, so I don't even go there anymore because they make you park like this far away from each other. You have to go through your sunroof half the time. Um, but with this one, I'm like, I was trying to think, like, it sounds weird
Yeah, they charge like
because I,
60 to $100.
right. So I'm going
You
like,
know,
I remember I was telling him, like, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to add to this, but then I was like, wait a minute. I'm like reading it and I'm going like, so this guy, that kind of, he's like, okay, I got this ticket. And I'm like, okay. And he's showing it in this picture. Like I'm looking at it, it says Olympia Development violation. Okay. So it's not like a parking ticket. It's so I've actually been in this situation. So years and years ago. So over in Windsor, we have University of Windsor and then we have St. Clair College. So it's kind of our two, our Michigan State, I guess, right? So I went to the University of Windsor. I was not a student at St. Clair College literally ever. I went to a seminar and there was this class. So I went to it at the college and it was at night. And unknowingly, I parked in the teacher's lot. Okay. But it was at like 7 o'clock at night until like 9:30. And when I came out, there was a ticket on my windshield. I'm like, oh shit. Like what the like uh-oh, this isn't good. So I went back in and the parking enforcement was actually there's a desk like right when you walk in the college. And I was like, hey, like what the hell, right? And they're like, oh, where were you parked? And I was like over in the lot right there, like, oh, that's the teacher's lot. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like I was just here for this seminar thing. And they're like, oh, are you a student here? And I'm like, no, I go to the university. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. And they literally ripped it up in front of me. So in that way, and I looked it up, they could technically issue a like violation. And if you were a student, it would basically go on like it wouldn't be on like your transcript, but it would be part of your like you would owe them that money from having a parking violation. So if you were a student, it mattered. If you weren't, it didn't matter because they don't know who you are because it's just the college that was doing it, right? So in similar terms, I was looking at this going Olympia Entertainment is doing this. So legally, I think they can because it's their property. But like, how are you going to enforce that ticket? You know what I
that's
mean?
the
Like that's
question.
where I'm kind of confused. Like just drive away. It's not the cops. Like what are they gonna do? Like obviously they have your plate and stuff like
O-
that.
Only
But
law
how are you?
enforcement can find someone like that.
Well, yeah, and also I kind of was like, this is kind of weird because I'm wondering, and if this is the picture, um, yeah, so it's Clifford and Cass. I've parked by this lot. Actually, if you look at the picture on the free, there's a black fence in the back. That's actually one of the nice lots that I usually go to, not the one that I'm looking at here. But this is one of those man-made or the man-attended ones, and I wonder, like, I wonder if it was just something where it was somehow like not secured, right? And it was open. Like, I don't know if you can just block off, like, there's probably lots where you can just drive into them. But what if there was some random guy that was like, I'm just going to pose as a parking attendant and make a quick buck and like let these people come in here. And then Olympia's like, what the hell? This is supposed to be closed. Like, the easiest thing to do is have cameras there and increase your security so that no one goes onto your property. Like, if someone comes onto my property at my house, like, it's kind of both of our faults. Like, if I want people to not come in, I'm going to build a bigger fence. I'm going to put a security camera. I'm going to put floodlights. Like, I don't know, maybe do that. Right.
That could be,
but I
that could
get,
be the case.
Yeah, I get that it's frustrating as someone that was like, wait, I paid to be here. So they need to get to the bottom, like, well, who was the guy that was letting you park here? You know, was he an employee? Like, that would be a camera would be nice, you know?
Yeah, but to charge for even more money, like $60 to $100, like what's that about? That was my knee-jerk reaction, at least.
Yeah. I think with that stuff, like I said, you kind of look for like, well, what happened? Because like often
What did
our
someone do
knee-jerk
wrong?
Yeah, like often, and even we talk about sports or whatever, like for me, like my knee-jerk reaction with sports oftentimes is wrong. Like it sometimes it's just not. If I step back and go, okay, wait, let me think about this. You know, if I think about it from this way at different angles, and I can understand it at least, maybe I don't agree with it. This is something where I was like, something weird's go like this. Mine thing wasn't the ticket; it was who the hell was letting them in. Like, if it wasn't an Olympia employee, then who the hell was it? This isn't this guy's fault. Like, what they should be doing is, okay, if they investigate this, they should go, was this an Olympia employee that let them in the lot, right? If it wasn't, we're not issuing these tickets. We're not going to enforce these, right? I think the people issuing them, they're just doing their job, right? And give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, that's just what they're doing. Like, they're not supposed to be dick. But is it something like, I'm looking at it the opposite way? You're looking at it like they're trying to gouge people, right? So I'm just trying to look at it the opposite way and go, like, that would be the other way to look at it is someone fucked up, you know, or someone was, that's hilarious. If like some homeless guy like pulled that off and just like got a couple $100, like, good for him. But like the Illich family, I can see it, right? Because they have a reputation. Right. And I guess that would be the knee-jerk reaction is fuck those guys. Like, again, like how much more money do you need, right?
How much more can you afford to pay?
Yeah, where the hell's the District Detroit, damn it? Right?
Yeah, it's not even finished.
Well, it's never gonna be a thing. Like, and that's where I looked at, and I remember seeing that, right, and going the mock-ups of LCA and, you know, the areas around it look beautiful, and I'm like, wow, like this is
at least the arena's finished.
Like, and here's the thing, like Detroit gets a shit rap. I'm in Windsor, man. Like, if you go downtown Windsor, Olette Avenue, I'd rather be downtown Detroit at this point. Like, Windsor's sketchy. So, and it never used to be like that, but Detroit, I mean, especially if you go down Woodward, I mean, they've done such a great job of like revitalizing that whole area. They're doing like, it's like a mini Michigan Mile from Chicago. You know, they got the Under Armour shop and they got, you know, Nike, and they're trying to make it nice. There's grass, you know, there's no, you know, I call it the poop smoke coming out of the fucking sewers. Like, it's nicer down there. I don't mind walking down there. They got the lights on all the way down to LCA, but they're making more parking lots. So that's what the Illich is, where I have a problem with it as I go, and I'm Canadian. I didn't pay for this, but like being in Michigan, being in the States, like if you're in that city, like tax money went to help build that arena when like the Illiches they have the money. They can build it themselves, right? But they got taxpayer money to build the arena, promised, hey, we're going to develop the area around it. But instead of developing it, they made more parking lots. So that's the part of the story, or maybe a side piece of the story. I'm like, well,
that's why Moss and his DSR squad in the past have called him the parking lot king, Chris Illich.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I look at too is why would they want to build around the arena, right? So let's just say this. So like LCA, right? Like that's their rink. Everything in it is revenue for the Illiches, right? Pistons games, Red Wings, concerts, whatever, right? Why would I want to surround the area with competition. That's all you're doing, right? So anytime you see, like, I guarantee you, the next time a city or a team goes, hey, we're getting a new arena. Okay, we were talking, Bobo went off about the Coyotes the other day, right?
Yeah.
They're looking at a building arena in Tempe. I guarantee, and I don't even have to read it, that they went and went, we're going to make some sport bars. We're going to put a bunch of businesses around here. It's going to be booming. The economy is going to be great in Tempe, Arizona, because this new arena. It's all bullshit. Like, that never happens. And you can look back, like, there's nothing that went there around that arena that you could call the District Detroit. They want people going into the arena and spending more money in there. They want you to go to Mike's Pizza. They want you to go to, well, it was called Kid Rocks. I forget what it's called now. They want you to go into the arena, buy food there, buy a drink there. Why would I want you to go pregame, at, well, Chelly's isn't there either now, to the Tin Roof? Why would I want you to go there? I want you to come and spend your money where I am. I don't want to develop around here. I'll make parking lots because I'll make more money off of that. And they're easy. They're cheap.
Yeah, because he just wants more people to attend games. That's what I see.
Well, I mean, to do that, you need to get a better team. And I mean, they're already working on that, obviously.
Yeah, you got to earn it.
Right. So, yeah, this whole parking lot thing was kind of interesting. I was reading it, and it's like, man, I had a lot of questions, but I'm interested to see how they're going to, like, go with this. Because, like, even at the end, it's like, when did they start issuing tickets? Like, who the hell knows, right? How do they enforce it? Like, what do? They mail it to you? Like, they have your license plate, obviously, right? They have the make of your car. Yeah, why wasn't it secured? I said that. Why isn't it secured? Who took his money? Who was the guy? Like, so there's all these things where I feel like it's a story where I would want to go, I'm gonna wait and see what the answers to some of these questions are, before I go and be like, fucking illiches. You know what I mean? But hey, if it is price gouging, I mean, that's bullshit.
Yeah,
right?
it was price gouging either way. Whether they
you're right, because it's like, wait, even if it was right, what was it, $100? I didn't even see
it was 60 to 100
60 to 100
per parking ticket.
Now, I don't know how much a ticket is in the States.
Parking spot.
But I mean,
don't know.
It's less than, I mean, it's $20 to get into the lot. I mean,
I can afford 20.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I guess that's something where, like, they're setting the price. That's really weird. Like, I feel like that's something where maybe what they should have done is, well, I mean, call the authorities. Like, hey, I have people parking in a lot that's secured. Can you come down and ticket them? Right?
Yeah.
Why didn't they do that? That's another question.
No, why didn't they do that? That's another question. Yeah.
So that kind of maybe supports your theory, right?
That's where I'm struggling here with this article. The way it was written, the way I read it.
Yeah, and technically, and I mean, another thing to look at too is it is an opinion piece, right? So that's something where, like, technically, what we're doing right now, both of us, is both our opinions, right? We don't know a lot of the fact here, but, like, even me saying, like, well, here's who I think the Red Wings should sign. Well, it's not fact. I mean, if it happens, like, great, good for me. But, like, so it's this, whoever wrote it, Nancy Caper, I don't know who that is. So I don't know what her slant on this is, right? Maybe she hates Olympia.
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
Like, maybe that's what it is, right? Because there could be someone that could write this and go, someone screwed Olympia. They're charging
Screw their
people
customers.
to go in there, and it could be, that both ways. But
yeah,
I'm interested now to see. I'm gonna keep following it. And you're the one I didn't even know this was happening until you were like, "This is what we're gonna talk about." I'm like, "Oh, like, let me read this."
Yeah, sorry for that short notice.
It's so cool. I was like, "I'll look this shit up. I don't care." But yeah. So hopefully, I added a little bit to the conversation there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Now to our last topic: my NHL division realignment concepts. I have 3 of them. Yep. One being the Western and Eastern Conference. Western Conference staying the same as it exactly is, but here are my Eastern Conference divisions. First off, the Metropolitan Division: Buffalo Sabres, Columbus Blue Jackets, Detroit Red Wings, Ottawa Senators, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Washington Capitals. The Atlantic Division: Boston Bruins, Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, Montreal Canadiens, New Jersey Devils, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, and Tampa Bay Lightning. And the reason I by the way, that I create those concepts is because Detroit and Toronto are not Atlantic cities, and neither is
No,
Buffalo.
not really. I mean, when I look at like realignment, I think what they look at isn't like really geographical in a sense of like, because technically,
Not
what I would
geographical at all.
not at all, right? But what I would look at is if they renamed all the divisions, like let's say the old divisions, like the Adams, the all, the whatever conferences, like they just took away the
Which would be fine.
Metro and Atlantic. It would make sense because you're like, okay, they're not going by geography. They kind of are, right? They're looking at the travel.
Yeah,
So they're
travel.
looking at
Yes,
because when Detroit was in the West, I mean, holy shit! I mean, they traveled a ton, and that was something
but now they have to travel north to south, all the way from north to south to play the Lightning and Panthers.
And then also another thing they have to look at is time zones, right? And I mean, some of them, I think it mostly affects the West because you have your your Western time zone, but you also have that Central time zone, which is the weird one where it's like Colorado, St. Louis, Minnesota, Chicago. Like their games don't start at 7; they start at 8. It's like it's an hour behind, right? So that's interesting though. So like you're trying to make it more geographical in terms of like I'm gonna make like the Atlantic Division the Atlantic teams, right?
Yeah,
I know the sense of okay,
exactly.
And another thing that they're trying to force, and I don't like it, is they're trying to force rivalries by putting those teams in the divisions and going, they're playing each other a lot. We're gonna, that's not how it works. You know what I mean?
No, rivalries don't matter.
No, I mean,
and besides, the Red Wings and Lightning are not really a rivalry, to be honest. No,
not at all.
Red Wings and Panthers are not a rivalry.
I was having this conversation with a buddy, and I was like, and it might have been Bobo, honestly. It wasn't during the pod, but I was like, what is the biggest rivalry in hockey right now? And is there a rivalry in hockey right now? And if you do figure one out, it's going to be only one of a few reasons. So number one will be geography. They're close, right? Florida and Tampa, right? Battle of Alberta, Edmonton and Calgary. Do they really hate each other? Or is it just because they're both in Alberta? You know what I mean? I don't think Florida and Tampa really give a shit that they're.
What about Detroit and Toronto?
Detroit and Toronto is in my opinion different because Detroit and Toronto, it's more of a fan battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being in Windsor, Ontario, it's half Red Wings fans and half Leafs fans, and then we have a smattering of like Montreal fans. And then obviously there's the outliers. Like my brother's a Ducks fan. Like I don't get that. But anyway, like that's where I go. That's more the fans getting at it, right? So that's where I think rivalries can be fun is literally off the ice because there's fan rivalries, right? But if we're talking about the teams and the players, I think it takes something exceptional. And the biggest one we can talk about the Red Wings is Colorado. I mentioned before, I don't hate the Avalanche anymore. You know why? There's no one left from that team, and they're all gone.
Long time ago.
And even when it was like, remember in 2008 the Red Wings won. I mean, you got the poster on the wall in the back, right? I mean, if you look at when that rivalry started, 1996, Lemieux smashes Draper's face in, explodes his face.
That started it, yeah, of course.
Until 2002, even when Detroit blew him out in Game 7, chased Patrick Waugh, which is like one of the best games I've ever watched.
Yeah.
After that, there really wasn't anything. 2003, Patrick Waugh retired, and then 2004, like they didn't meet in the playoffs. 2005 lockout, 06 they didn't either. 2007 they didn't, and then 2008 they played one last time.
The Red Wings swept them.
They kicked the shit out of them in Game 4, like 8-2,
9-2.
So, yeah, and there was only a handful left. It was Sakic was still there, Hayduk, Foote. Most of the other players were new. Detroit really had, they had Draper, Multi, Holmstrom, Lidstrom was still there, but like not the main cast. I mean, Draper was still there, but. Lemieux was long gone, and now there's no one left. And if Detroit plays Colorado now, it's not a rivalry. Rivalries change, right? How about rivalries in terms of players? A big one is Washington-Pittsburgh, Crosby versus Ovechkin, right? Because they came in at the same time, and they were so polarizingly opposite. Like Crosby was like more like, I don't want to say quiet because he was kind of a sucky at the beginning. I don't really care now. I love watching him play. But Ovechkin was out there. He was, scoring a lot, and he was doing the crazy celebration.
And I got pins and caps in all three of my concepts, and I need to go
and they
through
have
these
to be
other
together.
two.
So
Yeah,
that's something where I would look in there too and go like, yeah, I mean, you can't force rivalries, and that's another reason why the division, the bracket for the NHL playoffs is the dumbest thing ever, because
yeah,
they're trying to be like, well, hey, they're going to meet a lot in the playoffs. I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, like, should Toronto have played Tampa in the first round? No, they were both like top of their, like, they had other teams arguably
yeah,
in the same series that weren't as good. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like Boston played Carolina. If Tampa or Toronto, I think they're, in my opinion, both better than those two teams. So they need to
yeah,
do 1 to 8. The only reason they're doing the bracket is because they're like, well, March Madness. I'm like, March Madness is different. Like,
yeah,
there's a reason why it's bananas, right? It's because crazy shit happens. In this, it's you can't force these rivalries. So, but I like that you went with the purely geographical, like based off the names of the division. I've never done that or seen that, so that's pretty cool.
yeah.
I think. Well, did you look at the West? Like, is it pretty accurate as to where pretty close?
Yeah, it's completely
So,
accurate. Yeah.
so my question, because I mean, I didn't write down, but like which teams? I'm sure some in the Atlantic and the Metro flipped. So
Hmm.
like who moved where? Because you flipped a few of them, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Or
the
a
Red
lot.
Wings, the Sabres, and the Maple Leafs are going to be in the Metropolitan Division in my
So
first one.
you kind of did like a kind of a diagonal cut then.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, like from basically like from that area down to like what, above Carolina maybe, or was
Yeah.
it kind of maybe above that because there'd be more teams.
Hmm.
So yeah, so you'd have
Yeah.
Tampa, Florida, Carolina. Yeah, okay. I mean, but
Hmm.
that's actually interesting because that's like the old the old Southeast Division. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of you're doing like a hybrid, which is that's kind of cool
A
because these have
hybrid.
three
Yes.
divisions.
That's the word I'm looking for.
They do it, yeah, because they have 3 divisions of 5, right? Now you got an
Yep.
extra team in each conference. So with
Hmm.
two, and that's something too. Like, I wonder if they went back that other way and had the divisions of 5 or 6, right? It'd probably make
Hmm.
it a lot easier to split it into 3, right? And go like, okay, it's going to be Ottawa, Montreal, Detroit, Buffalo, Toronto. Like, you know what I mean? Like the old Northeast division. Like, well,
Yeah.
Detroit's going to be in that
Exactly.
or something. That's kind of cool. And
Yep.
I would be interested to see if you plugged it in to see like travel times or distance, right? To be like,
Yeah.
okay, who's traveling the
Yeah.
most?
Travel times. Yes. That way, the
So
Red Wings don't have to travel to Tampa or Florida too much.
yeah, for sure. I mean, now
From north of the border to
talking
south of the border. You know what I
talking
mean?
Michigan sports, this is a little bit not off topic, but it's about travel. The Lions. Did you see the schedules came out? Obviously, right? Did you
Yeah, I did.
see?
I didn't quite see the entire schedule, but I'll take
Yeah.
a look at it.
So I wasn't even looking at the opponents. Now I'm going to the first game because they're playing Philly, so I'm definitely going to that because I'm an Eagles fan. And try and see if I can pull it up because they had the travel distances for each NFL team, and it was insane how little the Lions were traveling and like who was traveling the most and the difference in it. Travel distance. How many miles? Okay, here we go. Hopefully they have a list. Yep, here it is. Okay. So Detroit is at the bottom. The Steelers are only traveling like 6,000 miles. Detroit is at 8,000. The
Mm,
number one team that travels the most is the Seattle Seahawks, 29,000 miles. Like,
mm. Oh my
it's
goodness.
insane. It's like 5 times more than the Lions. I mean, but if you look at the teams at the top, it's interesting. It's Seattle and Denver, Jacksonville and Miami, New
Wow.
Orleans, Tampa, because these guys, their divisions are not based on geography at all. I mean, some of them kind
Right.
of, but some of these guys are flying across the country to play their division rival. I mean, like
Yeah.
Detroit and Minnesota aren't really that close, but
No.
I mean, it's interesting to see that like a lot of teams that are at the bottom didn't do that well in the state. I mean, Cincinnati did, but it has a lot to do with where your team is. It says how many times they cross time zones. Detroit, actually, Pittsburgh never crosses a time zone. They're in their own the whole time.
Right.
Detroit does it 8 times. Seattle and Denver, it's 34 and 32. So talk about like that's competitive disadvantage and competitive advantage at a premium, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of hockey, actually a good follow on Twitter is Chris Pronger.
Chris
Because
Pronger.
he joined like maybe a month or two ago Twitter, and he does these threads where he'll talk about behind the scenes stuff. He talks about travel and how like the divisions and stuff actually mattered. Where he went from playing in Hartford to St. Louis and then to Philly. He said Philly was the easiest place to play, and they never had to travel anywhere. And then playing in Anaheim, it was like every single trip you're freaking flying out East Coast, so you're going across the country every single time you play an away game. So he goes, it adds up, right? So hey, kudos to you for trying to realign it so it's a little.
I got two more.
All right, let's
go. And then these are different named conferences, except that the divisions are still geographic. The Campbell Conference and the Wales Conference.
I love it. I have the old Yzerman Campbell Conference All-Star jersey, the orange one.
There you go. The Campbell Conference consists of the West and South divisions. The West Division, the Anaheim Ducks, Calgary Flames, Edmonton Oilers, Los Angeles Kings, San Jose Sharks, Seattle Kraken, Vancouver Canucks, Vegas Golden Knights. The South Division, Arizona Coyotes, Carolina Hurricanes, Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars, Florida Panthers, Nashville Predators, St. Louis Blues, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. To the Wales Conference, the North Division, the Buffalo Sabres, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Detroit Red Wings, Minnesota Wild, Ottawa Senators, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Winnipeg Jets. The East Division, Boston Bruins, Montreal Canadiens, New Jersey Devils, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Washington Capitals. The second one, Campbell Conference, West Division, Ducks, Flames, Oilers, Kings, Sharks, Kraken, Canucks, Knights, same as the first Campbell Conference West Division. South Division, Coyotes, Hurricanes, Avalanche, Stars, Panthers, Predators, Blues, Lightning. And then the Wales Conference it's going to be a little bit different. Boston North Divisions consists of the Boston Bruins, Chicago Blackhawks, Columbus Blue Jackets, Detroit Red Wings, Minnesota Wild, Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Winnipeg Jets. So you see, I went all original 6 on this one. And then the East Division, Sabres, Devils, Islanders, Rangers, Senators, Flyers, Penguins, and Capitals. Your thoughts?
Okay.
Those are all of them.
I love it. Okay. I like the first ones you did. I think that one would actually work because it's subtle changes that actually make sense in terms of the geography. I love the creativity in because they've never here's the thing. I love it because it makes it totally different than what we're ever used to, right? The only reason that they'll never do the North and South division is because of the time zones. That's the only reason, because
good point.
In the South division you had Arizona and Carolina. That's when I heard that I was like, oh yeah, they would never do. That would be cool because it's oh yeah, you would have the Battle of the South and shit like that would be kind of neat because it's oh, it's all teams down there. So maybe some of the distances traveled would make sense for most teams, but the time the time zones might not, right? Because that would be a difficult thing to do too. And I think that's why that's on a betting website for the NFL actually, which is interesting. You can bet based on they cross time zones. So it screws up you've done that, right? I mean, if you go out to, the West Coast or something and you're 3 hours behind, it screws you up a little bit, right?
I haven't been to the Western regions since I was 6 when I went to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah. I mean, going from here, now Windsor's right under Detroit, but if you go from here to Chicago, you're crossing a time zone and then you're an hour, I think it's an hour behind. So technically it does mess you up a little bit because you get an extra hour. It's like freaking daylight savings time. You're that one day where it fucks you up because you're holy shit. I mean, I only slept 6 hours, but I have to get up because this is the actual time now. Imagine doing that every third day. Back and forth, wow. Also now it's not, but it's not 1 hour, it's 3 hours. I'm not doing that. Right. So the issue with that one would be the North and South trying to have it kind of layered up top instead of having it east west. So I think that's the only reason they'll always keep it like that. And I think that's why every sport is like that. I mean, if they split, there was a way to do it that way, I think it'd be really cool. If you did regions And I think you did one where it was like kind of like, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, and you figure out how to divide it where it would still be kind of the east and the west division, right? So you're kind of doing the same thing they have now. But I like the subtle change, the first one you did, where you move Detroit kind of into that other spot and kind of flipped a few. I like that one. I think
Yes.
that's the most plausible one, but I like the other ones because like it's just so outside the box that I love shit like that. So you got to send me the actual list. I want to look it over after.
I got pictures of them on my iPhone 13.
Let's go.
So yeah.
You message me because I want to check out the crazy ones and see if we can.
Yes.
We'll workshop it and see if we can see if we can make it work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's try. So yeah, those are all the topics that I have for this episode. Kyle Busch, thank you very, very much for investigating and detecting truth about the Red Wings and doing statistics and the advanced stats and going outside the box in the NHL and everything else. So again, follow Kyle Busch on Twitter at Kyle Busch 11. He's from the Healthy Scratch podcast. Like its Facebook page, subscribe on YouTube, and visit healthyscratch.ca. This has been the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast for May 23rd, 2022. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram and like it on Facebook and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Shout out to Marco's Pizza, Cali Tickets, Super Draft Fantasy and Sportsbook mobile apps, Northern Star Event Rentals, Evergreen Resort and Cadillac, Yen Yoga and Fitness of Traverse City. Visit its new website, yenyogaandfitness.com. Download its mobile app. New location at the Delamar on June 20th in Traverse City. And Cadillac Nutrition. Download the Engage app today and order a nutritious shake or tea. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a high and we rest our case. Stay out of trouble and stay safe. Go Wings.